On a cold evening, as the train station buzzed with the hum of weary travelers, a girl sat alone on the platform. The warm glow of the station lights flickered above her, casting shadows on the worn, cracked tiles beneath her feet. Her tears were a stark contrast to the lively rush around her, like the stillness in the eye of a storm. The world continued its fast-paced motion, and yet she sat there, invisible to most. Her sobs echoed softly in the silence, unnoticed, lost in the cacophony of everyday life. She was a part of the crowd, yet separate from it, her existence slipping between the cracks of society's busy life. Her name was Emily, a homeless girl who had never imagined that her life would come to this. Alone, abandoned, and forgotten, she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her, as if the cold, hard pavement beneath her were her only true companion. The station, which once seemed like a symbol of hope, had now become a reminder of everything she had lost. Emily had tried to imagine better days, when her life was full of warmth and love, before the world had turned its back on her. She had memories of a small house, of laughter shared with family, and of feeling safe. But that was long gone now. The life she had once known felt like a dream, and the reality she now faced was a stark contrast. The cold pavement beneath her felt like an old friend, one that didn't judge. It had been there for her in every moment of need, in every tear she shed, in every sleepless night spent beneath the indifferent stars. Her dreams were of a warm home, of someone who would care enough to offer help. But as the minutes passed, those dreams seemed as distant as the stars above. The laughter of other passengers, the murmur of families greeting each other, and the occasional sound of a train pulling into the station seemed like a cruel reminder of the life she no longer had. She was no longer a part of this world, no longer someone anyone cared about. She was a stranger in a city of strangers. But little did Emily know, the arrival of one person, an encounter she'd never expected, would reshape the story of her life forever. This moment would leave a legacy that would echo through her heart for years to come. In the distance, a figure emerged from the shadows, her silhouette casting a long shadow across the platform. It was a woman, tall, graceful, and exuding an aura of calm that seemed to stand in stark contrast to the frenetic energy of the station. Melania Trump, her name whispered through the crowd, was at the train station for reasons unknown to most. She was not just the wife of a former president. She was someone with a hidden compassion that few truly knew. Publicly, she was known for her poise, her fashion, and her status, but privately, she was someone who had always been drawn to those in need. There was something in her heart that longed to help, though she often kept it hidden behind a carefully crafted image. As she approached Emily, the cold wind stirred her hair, and for a moment, she paused. It was almost as if the world around her slowed down, as if the timing of everything had been orchestrated for this very moment. Emily, still sitting on the ground, wiped her tears away hastily, not wanting anyone to see her vulnerability. She was not accustomed to being noticed, especially not by someone like Melania Trump. When Melania spoke, her voice was soft, almost as if she were speaking to a child. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. The question, so simple and yet so profound, caught Emily off guard. She looked up, her eyes still red from crying, unsure of how to respond. Was this real? Could someone like her, someone who had everything, truly care about someone like Emily, who had nothing? Emily felt a pang of disbelief. "You don't know me," she said, her voice laced with suspicion. "Why would you care?" Melania smiled faintly, understanding the mistrust in Emily's words. She had seen it before, from others who had been hurt by life. "Sometimes, people just need to know they're not invisible," Melania replied, sitting down beside Emily. "And sometimes, even a stranger can make a difference." The words were simple, but they struck a chord in Emily's heart. She had been invisible for so long, hiding in the shadows, hoping that someone would see her, that someone would care enough to help. But could she trust this woman? Could she trust someone whose life seemed so different from hers? As they sat in silence, Emily's mind raced. What did Melania want? Why was she here? The questions burned in her mind, but she didn't have the courage to voice them. She simply sat, trying to process the situation, trying to make sense of it. The truth was, she had never expected anyone to reach out to her. She had given up on the idea of kindness a long time ago, believing that the world had nothing left to offer her. And yet, here was Melania Trump, a figure of power and influence, sitting beside her, offering something that no one else had. Kindness, a listening ear, a moment of shared humanity. As the evening stretched on, the conversation shifted. Emily, still hesitant, began to open up. She spoke of the hardships she had faced, the places she had slept, and the loneliness that seemed to be her constant companion. Her voice quivered as she spoke, but there was something therapeutic in the act of sharing her story with someone who seemed to genuinely care. Melania, in turn, shared her own struggles, though they were not as visible to the world. There were things in her past that few knew about, secrets that she had buried deep inside. The pain of her own experiences with loneliness and loss resonated with Emily, who began to see Melania not as the figurehead the world knew, but as a woman who had faced her own battles. "I've been where you are," Melania confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not in the same way, but I've known what it feels like to feel invisible, to feel like the world doesn't care." Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. Melania, with all her wealth and fame, had known pain, had known what it felt like to be lost. It was hard to believe. Yet in the vulnerability in Melania's voice, Emily found a glimmer of hope. But just as Emily began to let her guard down, doubts crept in. Was this all too perfect? Was Melania's kindness genuine? Or was there something more to her actions? Emily's mind, once clouded with the desperation of survival, now raced with suspicion. What did Melania want from her? What was her true motivation? The more Emily thought about it, the more uncertain she became. Could someone as powerful as Melania truly care for someone like her, someone who had nothing to offer in return? Or was there an ulterior motive behind her actions? The tension between them grew as Emily confronted Melania about her true intentions. "What do you want from me?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" Melania's face tightened for a moment, but then she looked Emily in the eyes, her expression softening. "I don't want anything from you," she said. "I just want to help, because I know what it feels like to feel lost, to feel like there's no way out." The truth behind Melania's actions began to surface. She had seen the struggles of others, and her own experiences had led her to this moment. It wasn't about charity, it was about redemption. Melania was trying to make up for the parts of her past that she had never fully understood, to find a way to heal herself by helping others heal. As the night came to a close, Emily's trust in Melania began to grow. She realized that this act of kindness was not part of some grand scheme or hidden agenda. It was simply a gesture of humanity, something rare and precious in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. The two women, from different worlds, found common ground in their shared experience of loss and redemption. And as Emily left the station that evening, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Perhaps the world wasn't as cold as it seemed. Perhaps there was still hope. In the end, it wasn't Melania's wealth or fame that changed Emily's life. It was her humanity, her willingness to offer something more than just material help. And for Emily, that was worth more than any fortune. Sometimes, the most unexpected people offer us the greatest gifts of all: kindness, understanding, and hope. But can we truly accept these gifts, or are we too bound by our own fears and misconceptions?